April 21st, 1943. A wadi near Jebel Jaffa, Tunisia, North Africa. A British 6-pounder anti-tank gun crew from the 48th Royal Tank Regiment watched through dust and heat shimmer as a German Tiger tank advanced toward their position. The massive vehicle, weighing 56 tons and mounting the feared 88mm gun, represented everything Allied tankers had learned to dread in North African combat. The gun crew knew their limitations with mathematical certainty. The 6-pounder gun, officially designated the Ordnance Quick-Firing 6-pounder 700 weight, fired a 57mm armor-piercing round at approximately 2,600 feet per second muzzle velocity. Against the Tiger's frontal armor, 100mm thick mounted vertically, this round had virtually zero chance of penetration at combat ranges. The crew was not expected to destroy the Tiger. They were expected to delay it, distract it, perhaps damage its tracks or external components, while heavier weapons maneuvered for better firing positions. What happened in the next 30 seconds would change military history in ways no one present could have anticipated. One round, fired under desperate circumstances at a target the weapon was never designed to defeat, would capture the only German Tiger tank that would survive the war intact and operational. That single tank, preserved through accident and circumstance, would become the sole running Tiger tank remaining in the entire world. Its capture would provide Allied intelligence with information that shaped tank tactics for the remainder of the war and influenced armored vehicle design for decades afterward. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The context surrounding Tiger 131's capture in April 1943 cannot be understood without Prussible examining the broader strategic collapse of Axis forces in North Africa. Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of French North Africa beginning November 8, 1942, had placed Axis forces in Tunisia under pressure from two directions. British 8th Army advanced from Egypt in the east, while American and British forces pressed from Algeria in the west. By April 1943, Axis forces held only a shrinking pocket in northeastern Tunisia, centered on Tunis and Bizerte. Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, equipped with Tiger tanks, had arrived in Tunisia beginning November 23, 1942. This marked the combat debut of German heavy tanks in North Africa and introduced Allied forces to a weapon that would dominate psychological warfare for the remainder of the conflict. The Tigers mounted the famous 88mm KOK 36L56 gun, derived from Germany's highly effective anti-aircraft weapon. This gun could penetrate any Allied tank's frontal armor at ranges where return fire remained impossible. Intelligence summaries circulated to British and American forces in early 1943 described the Tiger's capabilities with numbers that seemed exaggerated. Combat weight exceeded 55 tons. Frontal armor measured 100mm thick. Main armament could destroy Allied tanks at distances beyond 2 kilometers. Many Allied tankers dismissed these reports as intelligence exaggeration until they encountered Tigers in actual combat. The Battle of Sidi Bou Zid on February 14th and 15th, 1943, demonstrated Tiger superiority decisively against American forces. Combat Command C of the United States 1st Armored Division counterattacked on February 15th with 52 Sherman medium tanks. German forces had positioned anti-tank guns in a classic ambush, with Tigers supporting from longer range. By the time Combat Command C withdrew, 46 of 52, Sherman tanks had been destroyed or disabled. Post-battle analysis revealed information that would prove critical for understanding both Tiger capabilities and Tiger vulnerabilities. A battlefield survey conducted 3 weeks after the engagement mapped destroyed American tanks and determined what weapons had killed them. Remarkably, only one Sherman had been hit by an 88mm round, either from a Tiger or from towed 88mm anti-tank guns. Most American tanks fell to 50mm guns from Panzer IIIs or 75mm guns from Panzer IVs. The survey demonstrated that Tigers were relatively few in number, but their psychological impact far exceeded their actual battlefield presence. American medical officers documented what they termed tiger phobia among tankers who had encountered the German heavy tanks. The mere report of tigers in an operational area would cause American units to request air support and artillery preparation before advancing. This psychological effect multiplied the tiger's tactical value far beyond its actual numbers. British forces in Tunisia faced similar challenges, though their experience with German armour extended back through 3 years of desert warfare. The 48th Royal Tank Regiment operated Churchill infantry tanks, heavily armoured vehicles designed for infantry support rather than tank versus tank combat. The Churchill Mark III variant carried a 6-pounder gun as main armament, a weapon adequate against most German tanks but woefully inadequate against Tiger armour. Churchill crews understood their limitations through brutal experience. The Churchill's maximum armour thickness of 102 mm on the frontal turret provided excellent protection by Allied standards. However, the Tiger's 88 mm gun could penetrate Churchill frontal armour at ranges exceeding 1,500 metres. Churchill crews could not effectively engage Tigers frontally, at any range their 6-pounder guns could reach. Tactical doctrine emphasised that Churchills should avoid direct confrontation with Tigers when possible, instead using their heavy armour to draw fire, while more capable anti-tank weapons engaged from favourable positions. The final weeks of the Tunisian campaign in April and early May 1943 revealed a different Tiger vulnerability that would prove more decisive than any Allied weapon. Mechanical breakdowns, spare parts shortages, and fuel supply problems immobilised more Tigers than Allied action destroyed. Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 had arrived in Tunisia with 20 Tigers and 16 Panzer III support tanks. By the end of April, only a handful remained operational. The rest sat abandoned or destroyed by their own crews as German forces collapsed. The battalion's war diary, captured by British forces and later analysed by Allied intelligence, documented the deteriorating situation week by week. Entries from December 1942 showed 20 Tigers operational upon arrival. By December 28th, only 14 remained operational with 8 down for mechanical repairs. Spare parts proved unavailable. Fuel supply was irregular and insufficient for sustained operations. By January 30th, 1943, only 11 Tigers remained operational. The diary noted that fuel shortages were becoming critical, with each Tiger requiring continuous supplies of fuel, lubricants, and spare parts that German logistics in North Africa could not provide consistently. March entries reported only 6 Tigers operational, with the remainder down from mechanical failure or fuel shortages. Requests for spare engines were denied, with headquarters reporting no engines available anywhere in the theatre. The April 20th entry captured the desperation that characterised the final collapse. Allied offensives were breaking through all German positions. Orders came to retreat, but fuel. Supplies were sufficient only for limited movement. Many Tigers would have to be abandoned. Demolition teams were overwhelmed trying to destroy so much equipment. Some vehicles would inevitably fall into enemy hands intact. April 21st, 1943 dawned clear and hot across northeastern Tunisia. British forces were conducting what would later be designated Operation Strike, an offensive aimed at capturing critical high ground near WWII in the Medjerda Valley. The 48th Royal Tank Regiment advanced with Churchill tanks in support of infantry from the Hampshire Regiment. German forces defending the sector included elements of Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 with an unknown number of operational Tigers. The terrain favoured defence. Rocky wadis cut across the landscape, providing concealment for anti-tank positions. Low ridges offered excellent firing positions for German armour while limiting Allied approach routes. Visibility exceeded 2,000 metres across open ground, placing Allied tanks within effective range of German 88mm guns long before they could effectively return fire. Tiger 131, commanded by an officer whose identity remains uncertain in available records, occupied a defensive position overlooking approaches to Jebel Jaffa. The tank's tactical number, 131, painted in white on the turret, identified it as part of the 1st Company. The crew had received orders to hold their position as long as possible to allow other German units to withdraw toward Tunis. Fuel supplies were critically low across the entire battalion. Each Tiger had enough fuel for perhaps 30 to 40 kilometers of movement under combat conditions, hardly sufficient for sustained mobile defense. British forces advancing toward German positions encountered heavy resistance from anti-tank guns, machine gun nests, and dug-in infantry. Churchill tanks of the 48th Royal Tank Regiment pushed forward, providing fire support while presenting their heavy frontal armour toward known German positions. The appearance of a Tiger tank on the ridgeline caused immediate alarm across British radio networks. Standard procedure called for infantry to take cover, while Churchill's attempted to suppress the Tiger with fire, buying time for heavier anti-tank weapons to move into position. Tiger 131 began engaging British Churchills at approximately 1,500 metres range. The 88mm gun proved devastatingly effective. The first round penetrated a Churchill's frontal armour, killing the crew instantly. The second round disabled another Churchill, forcing the crew to evacuate. British tankers recognised immediately that they faced the tactical situation they most feared, a hull-down Tiger in a prepared position with clear fields of fire. Churchill tanks returned fire, knowing their 6-pounder guns could not penetrate Tiger frontal armour at current range. The 6-pounders, armour-piercing round, officially designated shot armour-piercing capped, ballistic capped, weighed 6 pounds and 11 ounces. At 1,000 yards range, this round could penetrate approximately 74 millimeters of vertical armour under optimal conditions. The Tiger's frontal armour measured 100 millimeters thick, providing a safety margin of approximately 26 millimeters, even under optimal penetration conditions. British gunners aimed for the Tiger's tracks, hoping to immobilize it. They fired at the gun mantlet, hoping for a lucky ricochet into thinner top armour. They targeted vision ports and external components, trying to blind the crew or damage systems. None of these shots achieved significant effect. The Tiger continued engaging British tanks methodically, exploiting its enormous advantage in armour protection and gun range. What happened next remains subject to some uncertainty in available historical records, as battlefield accounts from participants contain minor inconsistencies typical of combat documentation. However, the essential facts are established through multiple sources, including British after-action reports, German records, and post-war analysis of Tiger 131 itself. A 6-pounder round, fired from a Churchill tank at range estimated between 700 and 1,000 metres, struck Tiger 131's turret ring. The turret ring, the rotating mechanism that allows the turret to traverse on the hull, represented one of the few genuine vulnerabilities on the Tiger's otherwise formidable armour scheme. The ring required precise engineering tolerances to allow smooth rotation while maintaining protection. This engineering compromise created a gap, typically only a few millimetres wide, between the turret and hull armour. The 6-pounder round struck at an angle that drove it into this gap. The round did not penetrate the turret ring mechanism completely, but the impact jammed the turret traverse mechanism. The Tiger's turret, mounting the 88mm gun and weighing several tons, suddenly froze in position. The crew could no longer rotate the turret to engage targets. A Tiger with a jammed turret remained formidable in direct frontal engagements, where its fixed gun could still fire, but became vulnerable to flanking manoeuvres it could not counter. Simultaneously, or in very close succession, additional British fire struck Tiger 131. One round hit the gun mantlet with sufficient force to damage the recoil mechanism. The 88mm gun could no longer fire reliably. Another round struck near the driver's position, possibly damaging vision equipment or control systems. The exact sequence and precise damage from each hit cannot be determined with absolute certainty from available documentation, but the cumulative effect was clear. Tiger 131 was disabled. The crew faced a decision that would determine whether this particular Tiger survived the Kaite war. German doctrine required that disabled vehicles be destroyed to prevent capture. Demolition procedures for the Tiger called for placing explosive charges in the engine compartment, ammunition storage areas, and turret to ensure total destruction. However, ammunition shortages, time pressure, and the general chaos of the collapsing Tunisian front meant demolition procedures were not always followed completely. Tiger 131's crew evacuated the disabled vehicle. Whether they attempted demolition and failed, whether they lacked demolition charges, or whether they simply fled in the confusion of combat remains unclear. British forces advancing past the Tiger's position found it abandoned but intact. The turret was jammed, the gun was damaged, but the vehicle remained structurally whole, with no evidence of demolition attempts. Lieutenant Peter Gudgeon of the 48th Royal Tank Regiment documented the immediate aftermath in a report later shared with intelligence officers. His account describes finding the Tiger abandoned with hatches open. British soldiers approached cautiously, expecting booby traps. None were found. The interior showed evidence of hasty evacuation with personal equipment, ammunition, and technical manuals left behind. Most significantly for later intelligence analysis, the Tiger showed no fire damage, no explosive damage, and no deliberate destruction of critical components. The capture electrified British intelligence officers who understood immediately the intelligence value of an intact Tiger. For over 4 months, Allied forces had fought Tigers without fully understanding their capabilities or limitations. Battlefield intelligence provided estimates of armor thickness, gun performance, and general dimensions. However, precise technical specifications, internal arrangement, mechanical systems, and engineering details remained largely unknown. An intact Tiger available for detailed examination represented an intelligence windfall that could provide information affecting tactical doctrine, weapon development, and crew training. Recovery operations began immediately, though the Tiger's immense weight created substantial challenges. Tiger 131 weighed 56.9 tons in combat configuration. British recovery vehicles were designed to recover 30-ton Crusader and Churchill tanks. Moving the Tiger required multiple recovery vehicles working together, plus careful route planning to avoid terrain that could not support the combined weight. Recovery crews reached Tiger 131 on April 22nd, 1 day after its capture. Initial assessment confirmed the damage British fire had inflicted. The turret traverse mechanism was jammed solid from the 6-pounder round impact into the turret ring. The gun recoil mechanism was damaged from a direct hit on the mantlet. However, the engine appeared undamaged. The transmission showed no obvious damage. The suspension and running gear remained intact. The fuel tanks were nearly empty, confirming intelligence reports about German fuel shortages. The recovery operation itself demonstrated the Tiger's extraordinary size and weight. 2 British ARV Mark I armoured recovery vehicles, each capable of recovering 30-ton tanks individually, struggled even working together to move Tiger 131. The convoy transporting the Tiger from the capture site to the nearest British maintenance facility moved at walking pace. Roads had to be assessed for load-bearing capacity. Bridges required engineering evaluation. Some routes could not support the Tiger's weight at all, forcing detours that extended the journey. 3 days after capture, Tiger 131 reached British maintenance facilities near Tunis. Engineers and intelligence officers from multiple units converged to begin preliminary examination. British ordnance officers measured armour thickness at multiple points. Metallurgists took samples for analysis. Technical, intelligence officers photographed every component, system, and detail. Translators worked on captured German manuals found inside the tank. The preliminary findings confirmed some intelligence estimates, while revealing new information that surprised British analysts. Frontal hull armour measured 100 mm thick, as intelligence had reported. Frontal turret armour also measured 100 mm. However, the gun mantlet varied from 120 to 200 mm thick, depending on location, providing even greater protection than estimates had suggested. Side hull armour measured 60 mm, with side superstructure armour at 80 mm. Rear armour was only 80 mm thick, confirming that Tigers remained vulnerable to flank and rear attacks. The internal examination revealed sophisticated German engineering throughout the vehicle. The Maybach HL230 P30 12-cylinder engine produced 690 horsepower, barely adequate for the Tiger's 56.9-ton weight. The Maybach Ulvar transmission featured 8 forward gears and 4 reverse gears, allowing the Tiger to move as rapidly backward as forward, useful for tanks fighting defensively. The interleaved road wheel arrangement with torsion bar suspension provided superior weight distribution and cross-country performance. British intelligence officers compiled their findings into a preliminary report distributed to all British armoured units in Tunisia by May 1, 1943. The report emphasised several critical points for tactical use. The Tiger's frontal armour could not be penetrated by any British tank gun currently in service. The 6-pounder gun mounted on Churchill tanks and Crusader tanks could not defeat Tiger frontal armour at any range. The 75mm gun on later Churchill variants might penetrate side or rear armour at close range, but remained inadequate for frontal engagement. The report recommended tactics that would become standard for Allied forces throughout the war. Avoid frontal engagement with Tigers when possible. Maneuver to attack from flanks or rear where armour was thinner. Use terrain to force Tigers into positions where side armour became exposed. Employ high-explosive rounds to damage tracks, vision equipment, and external components, even when armour penetration was impossible. Call for artillery support and airstrikes, rather than accepting unfavourable direct tank engagements. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. However, the preliminary British analysis, while tactically valuable, represented only the beginning of Tiger 131's intelligence contribution. The decision to transport this specific Tiger to the United Kingdom for exhaustive testing would provide information that shaped Allied tank development and tactical doctrine far beyond the immediate tactical bulletins distributed in Tunisia. The War Office in London received notification in early May 1943 that British forces in Tunisia had captured an intact Tiger tank. This news reached the highest levels of British military leadership within days. The Tiger had achieved near-mythical status among Allied forces through 6 months of combat reports describing its seemingly invincible armour and devastating firepower. An opportunity to examine one in complete detail represented an intelligence windfall that could not be overstated. The decision to transport Tiger 131 to the United Kingdom was made at ministerial level. The School of Tank Technology at Chobham, south of London, would conduct the primary evaluation. Additional testing would occur at the Gunnery School at Lulworth and potentially at other specialised facilities. The logistical challenges of moving a 57-ton tank across the Mediterranean and then across England were considerable, but deemed absolutely justified by the potential intelligence value. Loading Tiger 131 aboard ship at Tunis required specialised heavy lift equipment. Port engineers identified a vessel with sufficient cargo capacity and deck strength to handle the combined weight of the tank and its shipping cradle. The voyage across the Mediterranean to Gibraltar and then north to the United Kingdom took approximately 3 weeks, with the ship arriving in late May 1943. From the port, Tiger 131 travelled by specialised railway flatcar to Chobham, arriving in early June 1943. The School of Tank Technology at Chobham served as the British Army's premier facility for evaluating armoured vehicle design, testing new equipment, and analysing captured enemy vehicles. Engineers and technical officers had been preparing for months, studying intelligence reports, translating captured German documents, and developing comprehensive testing protocols. The arrival of an actual Tiger allowed theoretical analysis to be replaced with empirical measurement. Major General J.F.C. Fuller, one of Britain's most influential armour theorists, visited Chobham specifically to observe Tiger 131. His initial assessment, recorded in notes later published, captured the mixture of professional respect and strategic concern the Tiger inspired. He described it as the most formidable tank he had examined, combining armour protection that no Allied weapon could reliably defeat with firepower that could destroy any Allied tank at ranges beyond effective return fire. However, he also noted its enormous weight, complex mechanical systems, and high fuel consumption as potential vulnerabilities that might be exploited strategically, if not tactically. The testing program at Chobham began with comprehensive documentation. Photographers created a complete visual record of every external and internal component. Technical, illustrators produced detailed drawings showing arrangement of armor, location of mechanical systems, ammunition storage, crew positions, and vulnerable points. Metallurgists analyzed armor samples to determine composition, hardness, and manufacturing techniques. This documentation process alone consumed several weeks, but created a reference library that would inform British tank design for decades. Armor penetration testing represented the highest priority for tactical reasons. British forces needed to know definitively which weapons could defeat Tiger armor and under what conditions. The testing employed actual British anti-tank weapons firing at Tiger armor samples cut from the captured vehicle. The 6-pounder gun, standard equipment on Churchill and Crusader tanks, was tested first because it represented the primary British tank armament during the Tunisia campaign. Tests confirmed what battlefield experience had already indicated. The 6-pounder armor-piercing round could not penetrate Tiger frontal armor at any range. At 500 yards, the closest range tested for safety reasons. The 6-pounder round struck Tiger frontal armor and shattered without penetration. The armor showed impact damage but no perforation. At side armor, the 6-pounder achieved penetration at ranges under 400 yards when striking the 60mm side hull plates at optimal angles. However, side shots in actual combat were rare because Tigers employed hull-down positions and defensive tactics that minimized exposure of side armor. The 17-pounder gun, a new British anti-tank weapon just entering service in 1943, showed dramatically better performance. At 1,000 yards range, the 17-pounder firing armor-piercing discarding sabot ammunition could penetrate Tiger frontal armor reliably. This weapon, mounted on specially modified Sherman tanks designated Sherman Firefly, would become the primary British answer to German heavy tanks. However, production of 17-pounder guns was limited in 1943, meaning most British tanks would continue operating with inadequate armament for frontal Tiger engagements. American weapons were also tested because Allied cooperation required sharing intelligence data. The 75mm M3 gun mounted on standard Sherman tanks could not penetrate Tiger frontal armor at any practical combat range. At side armor, the 75mm achieved penetration under 500 yards range. The American 76mm gun, entering production in 1943 for later Sherman variants, performed better, but still could not reliably penetrate Tiger frontal armor beyond 800 yards. These test results confirmed the tactical guidance British intelligence had distributed in Tunisia. Tigers possessed frontal immunity to most Allied tank guns. Only the 17-pounder gun and similar weapons provided adequate penetration capability. Allied tanks armed with smaller guns needed to employ maneuver tactics, terrain usage, and numerical superiority rather than attempting direct frontal engagements. The mechanical evaluation of Tiger 131 revealed engineering sophistication that impressed British engineers, while simultaneously raising questions about production feasibility and field maintenance. The Maybach transmission with 8 forward gears represented advanced automotive engineering that provided excellent control over engine speed and power delivery. However, the transmission's complexity meant that field repairs required specialized tools and trained mechanics that German forces in combat zones often lacked. The interleaved road wheel suspension arrangement, featuring overlapping wheels mounted on swing arms, provided superior weight distribution compared to British suspension designs. This arrangement reduced ground pressure, improving cross-country performance in soft terrain. However, British engineers immediately recognized a critical weakness. Mud accumulation between overlapping wheels would freeze in cold conditions, immobilizing the tank until crews could chip away ice or wait for temperatures to rise. This vulnerability had devastating implications for winter operations. Maintenance requirements for the interleaved suspension exceeded those of conventional designs by an order of magnitude. Changing an outer road wheel on a Churchill required approximately 30 minutes. Changing an inner road wheel on the Tiger required removing up to 8 outer wheels first, a process consuming most of a day even with experienced crews and proper equipment. Under field conditions with limited tools and time pressure from tactical situations, this maintenance burden became prohibitive. The most significant finding from CHOBM testing involved fuel consumption and operational range. British engineers had compiled intelligence reports about German fuel shortages in Tunisia, but the systematic testing of Tiger 131 provided precise data that transformed understanding of Tiger operational limitations. The Tiger carried 545 litres of fuel, approximately 120 imperial gallons, or 144 US gallons in internal tanks. German technical documents specified operational range of 195 kilometres on roads, approximately 121 miles. British fuel consumption tests on prepared roads at steady cruising speed confirmed German specifications closely. Tiger 131 consumed approximately 180 litres per 100 kilometres on roads, equivalent to roughly 28 litres per 100 kilometres or approximately 10 miles per imperial gallon. This gave maximum road range of approximately 130 miles with full fuel load, matching German claims within measurement error. However, cross-country testing revealed dramatically worse consumption. CHOBM's rough terrain test course included hills, mud, sand, obstacles, and conditions simulating combat terrain. Test runs over measured courses consumed fuel at rates exceeding 280 litres per 100 kilometres, reducing operational range to approximately 100 kilometres or 60 miles under realistic off-road conditions. Combat simulation testing produced the most alarming data. When test crews performed realistic combat tasks including rapid acceleration and deceleration, frequent directional changes, turret traverse operations, extended idling periods simulating observation, and intensive radio use, fuel consumption approached 400 litres per 100 kilometres. Under these intensive conditions, operational range fell to approximately 60 to 70 miles before fuel exhaustion. British engineers calculated the logistics burden these consumption figures imposed on German forces. Each Tiger in active combat operations required approximately 7,000 litres of fuel weekly to maintain operational status. A battalion of 20 Tigers needed 140,000 litres weekly just for the Tigers themselves, not counting support vehicles, half-tracks, trucks, reconnaissance vehicles, and other equipment. For comparison, British intelligence compiled fuel requirements for Sherman-equipped units. A typical American tank battalion with 53 Sherman tanks required approximately 250,000 litres weekly, including all battalion vehicles. German heavy tank battalions with only 20 Tigers required over half as much fuel for less than 40% as many tanks. The intelligence reports compiled from CHOBM testing emphasized that Tigers possessed formidable combat capabilities but suffered from critical vulnerability through fuel consumption that limited operational range. German logistics must provide continuous fuel supply or Tigers would become immobilized. The reports recommended strategies to interdict enemy fuel supply lines as effective methods for neutralizing Tiger threats without requiring direct tank engagement. British operational research units cross-referenced CHOBM data with intelligence from other sources, revealing patterns that explained mysterious aspects of Tiger deployment. German heavy tank battalions rarely operated more than 40 kilometres from established supply bases. Tigers avoided prolonged movements when possible. They frequently assumed static defensive positions rather than pursuing defeated enemies. This was not merely tactical preference, but logistical necessity imposed by limited operational range. Captured German unit war diaries from multiple fronts confirmed this analysis. Heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 operated Tigers in Normandy during summer 1944. The battalion war diary documented recurring fuel shortages throughout the campaign. A July 8 entry reported excellent combat results, with 16 Sherman tanks and 3 Cromwell tanks destroyed for loss of 1 Tiger to mechanical failure. However, fuel supplies were exhausted after 4 hours of combat. The battalion sat immobile, awaiting fuel trucks while Allied forces withdrew. Pursuit was impossible due to fuel shortage. A July 20th entry reported fuel allocation reduced by 40% with orders to conserve fuel strictly. Tigers were restricted to defensive positions only with no offensive operations authorized until fuel situation improved. The entry noted with frustration that the best tanks in Europe sat idle for want of fuel. An August 6th entry reported 3 Tigers abandoned during withdrawal from the Falaise pocket. All were mechanically functional but had empty fuel tanks with no fuel available for movement. Demolition charges were placed, though crews were uncertain if detonation succeeded. British intelligence distributed tactical guidance based on Chobham findings to all Commonwealth forces by September 1943. The guidance advised that when encountering Tigers, units should avoid direct frontal engagement when possible. Instead, maneuver to force Tigers to reposition. Each kilometre a Tiger moves consumes significant fuel reserves. Extended manoeuvring exhausts Tiger fuel supplies rapidly. Immobilized Tigers can be bypassed or destroyed with artillery and air support, rather than risking direct tank engagement. Training films produced in late 1943 incorporated fuel consumption findings. One film, titled Understanding German Heavy Tanks, explained that the Tiger tank consumed approximately 14 litres per kilometre under combat conditions. Sherman tanks consumed approximately 4 litres per kilometre under most conditions. This meant Allied tanks could manoeuvre 3 to 4 times farther on equivalent fuel. Crews were instructed to use their mobility advantage by making Tigers chase Allied formations, burning scarce German fuel, then striking when Tigers could no longer manoeuvre effectively. The Normandy campaign in summer 1944 validated Chobham analysis comprehensively. As Allied forces broke out from beachhead positions in July and August, German armour units found themselves unable to conduct mobile operations. Heavy Panzer battalions equipped with Tigers sat immobilized not from battle damage but from empty fuel tanks. Allied armoured divisions advanced 130 miles in 7 days during the breakout from Normandy. Tigers could not match this operational tempo even with full fuel tanks. Their actual combat range of 60 to 70 miles meant they could barely reposition between defensive positions, much less conduct mobile operations across the battlefield. The liberation of France in August and September 1944 provided overwhelming physical evidence of Tiger fuel problems. Reconnaissance units found dozens of abandoned Tigers along German retreat routes. Most showed no significant battle damage. All had empty fuel tanks. German crews had destroyed what vehicles they could, but often lacked even the fuel necessary to conduct proper demolitions. Operational tanks were simply abandoned when fuel ran out. The Ardennes offensive in December 1944 exposed the fuel crisis catastrophically. German forces launched their last Great Western Offensive with strict fuel rationing. Each Panzer division received fuel calculated for approximately 150 kilometers movement with operational plans assuming capture of Allied fuel dumps for resupply. The plan failed completely. American forces held or destroyed fuel dumps and German armour immobilized across Belgium as fuel ran out. Kampfgruppe Paper, spearhead of 6th Panzer Army offensive, advanced 60 kilometers before fuel exhaustion stopped all movement. The battle group included Tigers from 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler. American soldiers at Stoumont and La Glaise reported Tigers littering roadsides, immobilized by empty fuel tanks rather than battle damage. Major Hal McCown, an American officer captured by Kampfgruppe Piper, who later escaped, testified that German officers discussed the fuel situation openly. They desperately needed to capture American fuel dumps. When American forces held the dumps, the German offensive collapsed. Tiger 131 remained at various British testing facilities through 1944 and into 1945 as evaluation programs continued. Additional testing examined cold weather performance, reliability under extended operation, maintenance requirements, and crew habitability. Each test program generated intelligence reports distributed throughout Allied forces. The cumulative intelligence value from this single captured tank exceeded any reasonable estimate of its worth in German service. The end of the war in May 1945 left Allied forces in possession of numerous captured Tigers across Europe. However, most captured Tigers were damaged, incomplete, or stripped of critical components. Tiger 131 remained the most complete and well-documented example in Allied hands. British authorities decided to preserve the vehicle as a historic artifact and training aid rather than scrapping it with other captured equipment. Through the late 1940s and 1950s, Tiger 131 resided at the School of Tank Technology at Chobham, where it served as a training exhibit for British armour officers studying World War II tank development. The vehicle that had terrorised Allied crews in 1943 became a classroom tool, teaching lessons about German engineering, tactical capabilities, and strategic limitations. The Tiger's combat effectiveness was undeniable, but so were its logistical vulnerabilities that Allied forces had learned to exploit. In 1951, the School of Tank Technology relocated, and Tiger 131 moved to the Bovington Tank Museum in Dorset, home to the world's finest collection of armoured fighting vehicles. The museum recognised Tiger 131's historical significance as the only Tiger tank captured in running condition during the war and preserved through the immediate post-war period when most captured equipment was scrapped. For decades, Tiger 131 sat in the museum as a static display. The Maybach engine that had powered it across North African battlefields remained installed but non-operational. The transmission that had provided 8 forward gears sat frozen. The interleaved road wheels that had distributed its 57-ton weight sat motionless. Visitors could see the Tiger, photograph it, and walk around it. But the vehicle that had once struck terror into Allied tankers now sat silent and still. The transformation of Tiger 131 from static display to running vehicle began in the early 1990s when the Bovington Tank Museum initiated an ambitious restoration program. Museum staff recognized that Tiger 131 represented not just historical artifact, but functioning machine that could be returned to operational status. The restoration would require extensive work on mechanical systems that had sat dormant for nearly 50 years, but the potential to demonstrate a running Tiger justified the enormous effort required. The restoration team faced challenges that illustrated exactly why Tigers proved so difficult to maintain under field conditions during the war. The Maybach engine required complete overhaul with new piston rings, bearings, gaskets, and seals. Original parts were unavailable, requiring custom manufacture of components based on German technical drawings. The transmission demanded specialized knowledge to disassemble, inspect, and rebuild with proper tolerances. The interleaved suspension required removal and refurbishment of all 48 road wheels, swing arms, and torsion bars. Fuel system components had corroded after decades of sitting with residual fuel. Hydraulic systems for turret traverse and gun elevation had seized. Electrical systems required complete rewiring. The work consumed years of effort by skilled technicians who gained deep appreciation for the engineering sophistication German designers had achieved and the maintenance burden this sophistication imposed on field mechanics operating under combat conditions with limited tools and spare parts. By 1998, after approximately 5 years of work, Tiger 131 returned to operational status. The Maybach engine ran smoothly. The transmission shifted through all 8 forward gears. The tracks moved, driven by repaired final drives. The turret traversed on its repaired ring mechanism. The 88mm gun, while never intended to fire live ammunition again, could be elevated and traversed. Tiger 131 became the only running Tiger tank in the world, a status it maintains to the present day. The Bovington Tank Museum operates Tiger 131 occasionally during special events called Tiger Days, where paying visitors can see and hear the only running Tiger in existence. The demonstrations are carefully controlled, with the Tiger moving slowly along predetermined routes within the museum grounds. The Maybach engine's distinctive sound, a deep rumbling growl from 12 cylinders displacing 23 litres, provides visitors with sensory experience of what Allied soldiers heard when Tigers approached their positions during the war. These demonstrations serve educational purposes beyond mere spectacle. Visitors see the Tiger's size and bulk in motion, understanding visually why it weighed 57 tons and required such enormous fuel consumption to move. They hear the transmission shifting through gears, experiencing the sophisticated engineering that made the Tiger formidable in combat but difficult to maintain in the field. They observe the interleaved suspension, working as designed, while museum staff explain how this same suspension created maintenance nightmares when mud froze between overlapping wheels. The operational demonstrations also illustrate fuel consumption in tangible terms. Tiger 131 consumes approximately 280 litres of fuel during a typical 2-hour demonstration involving perhaps 20 kilometres of movement at low speed. This consumption rate, approximately 14 litres per kilometre, matches exactly the combat consumption figures British engineers measured at Chobham in 1943. Visitors who grasp this fuel consumption rate begin to understand why German logistics could not sustain Tiger operations despite the tank's tactical superiority. Tiger 131's survival represents extraordinary historical chance. Of approximately 1,340 Tigers produced during World War II, across 2 main variants, fewer than 10 complete examples survive today in museums worldwide. Most survivors show extensive damage from combat or deliberate destruction. Several are composite vehicles assembled from parts of multiple Tigers. Tiger 131 stands alone as the only Tiger captured during the war that was preserved complete and has been restored to running condition. The specific circumstances that saved Tiger 131 from destruction involved multiple factors, each necessary but not sufficient alone. The 6-pounder round that jammed the turret and damaged the gun disabled the Tiger without destroying it. The crew's failure to demolish the vehicle, whether from lack of time, lack of demolition charges, or confusion in the collapsing Tunisian front, left it intact for British capture. The immediate recognition by British intelligence officers of the vehicle's intelligence value ensured it was preserved rather than scrapped after preliminary examination. The decision to transport it to the United Kingdom rather than leaving it in North Africa protected it from post-war scrapping that destroyed most captured equipment. The Bovington Tank Museum's decision to preserve it through the 1950s, when most war equipment was being disposed of, saved it for future restoration. The museum's 1990s restoration program returned it to running condition. Remove any single factor from this chain and Tiger 131 would not exist today as a running vehicle. The world would possess no operational Tigers. Understanding of what Tigers looked like, sounded like, and moved like would derive entirely from period photographs and film footage. The loss to historical understanding would be immeasurable. The lessons Tiger 131 taught during World War II continue resonating through modern armoured vehicle design and military logistics planning. The principle that tactical superiority means nothing without logistical sustainability became foundational to American and British tank development after the war. Every armoured vehicle designed since 1945 incorporates considerations of fuel consumption, maintenance requirements, spare parts availability, and field repair procedures alongside armour protection and firepower. The British Centurion tank, entering service in 1945 too late for World War II combat, embodied lessons learned partly from Tiger 131 analysis. The Centurion emphasized mechanical reliability and ease of maintenance as design requirements equal to armor and firepower. The vehicle achieved fuel consumption approximately half that of the Tiger, despite comparable weight. Maintenance procedures were simplified to reduce field repair time. The Centurion served in British and Allied forces for over 60 years, seeing combat in Korea, Suez, Vietnam, and numerous other conflicts. Its longevity testified to the value of designing for sustainability rather than merely maximum capability. American tank development followed similar principles. The M48 Patton tank, developed in the early 1950s, achieved better than 1 mile per gallon fuel economy, despite weighing 47 tons and mounting a powerful 90mm gun. American engineers remembered that mobility depends fundamentally on fuel efficiency, and fuel efficiency demands disciplined engineering choices, balancing multiple competing requirements. Modern main battle tanks continue this legacy. The British Challenger 2, entering service in 1994, weighs 62 tons and mounts a 120mm gun, providing firepower exceeding anything World War II designers imagined. Yet the Challenger 2 achieves operational range exceeding 300 miles on roads through attention to fuel efficiency and intelligent engine management systems. The American M1 Abrams tank, powered by a gas turbine engine producing 1,500 horsepower, carries nearly 500 gallons of fuel and achieves approximately 0.6 gallons per mile, enabling operational range exceeding 300 miles despite being a 70-ton vehicle. These modern tanks demonstrate that lessons learned from Tiger 131 were absorbed completely into military engineering culture. Firepower and armor protection remain essential, but must be balanced with sustainable logistics. The most powerful tank in the world becomes useless when immobilized waiting for fuel trucks that never arrive. German engineering created a tactical masterpiece in the Tiger. German logistics could not sustain it in extended operations against enemies who controlled the air and systematically destroyed supply infrastructure. Tiger 131 today represents living history in the most literal sense. When its Maybach engine starts during demonstration days at Bovington, visitors experience sensory connection to World War II that no photograph, film, or written account can fully provide. The sound of the engine, the sight of the massive vehicle moving, the smell of exhaust, the vibration transmitted through the ground, all combine to create understanding that transcends intellectual knowledge. The Tiger that struck fear into Allied tankers in 1943 now educates visitors about the complex relationship between tactical effectiveness and strategic sustainability. Its preservation serves purposes beyond mere nostalgia or military enthusiasm. It teaches engineering students about the consequences of design decisions that prioritize performance over maintainability. It teaches military officers about the necessity of balancing tactical capability with logistical support. It teaches historians about the material reality of mechanized warfare and the human experience of soldiers who operated these massive machines under combat stress. The 6-pounder round that disabled Tiger 131 in April 1943 represents one of history's most consequential lucky shots. The probability of a 6-pounder round striking the precise location on the turret ring necessary to jam the traverse mechanism while not penetrating completely must have been extraordinarily low. The probability of the same engagement damaging the gun recoil mechanism without destroying the tank entirely was equally remote. The probability of the crew abandoning the vehicle without demolition was low, given German doctrine and training. Yet all these improbable events occurred in sequence, preserving Tiger 131 for capture, analysis, and eventual restoration. The intelligence gained from testing this single vehicle shaped Allied tactics throughout the remaining 2 years of war in Europe. Thousands of Allied soldiers survived because tactical guidance based on Tiger 131 testing taught them how to fight German heavy tanks effectively. The fuel consumption data gathered at Chobham validated strategies of targeting German logistics rather than attempting frontal tank engagements. The mechanical analysis revealed vulnerabilities that explained why Tigers so often appeared immobilized rather than destroyed. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.